Okay, so today we recently did, if you do or don't know, we recently did mock transactions,
Cool.
and we did listing, we did if you're the buyer side, how to make an offer, and then the last part of this we did request for repairs and so on. Some things about request for repairs that probably should be addressed is how to put them together and what to do and what not to do. So I'm going to show you guys today a request for repairs that was a disaster, and I'll tell you why. When you're on the buyer side, what you'll do is normally you will do inspections. Now, what inspections should you schedule? Well, it kind of depends on what's going on. Usually an inspection, let me pull it up for, let's see if I can find this one. This was not, oh, what do you know? I don't know if we had the RPA seller property. Okay. For the inspections, I'll pull up another one then. Bingo. Okay, do you see this here?
Yes.
Okay. This was a home I sold last year for a good amount of money. It was a luxury home. And so this was what we were given. Now, this is how this was done correctly. So first, they did, usually when you do an inspection, you get an inspection report. And what they'll do is they'll give it to you, and they'll give you a summary page of all of the important things. One thing I like about elite inspections, and there's a few others that do that, they will actually highlight in red, like what are the things they noticed. Now, the idea of an inspection is basically, think of the point of view is you're trying to talk the buyers out of purchasing this home, and you're giving them everything that's wrong with the home. That's the idea. Now, realtors don't like that because they want the sale to go through. So a lot of times they get all upset over it, but that's the idea. And so that's how you explain it to both the seller and the buyer. Look, their job is to talk them out of buying this home, because then they're made aware of everything. So you as a buyer go into it eyes wide open. You as a seller are released of a lot of stuff that you may not even known about the home, but then now they know about it and they can't come back to you and say, hey, you never told us about this. Same thing when it comes to the disclosures, and even what's called the agent visual inspection disclosure, or AVIDs. That's when we walk through, and anything we can see, smell, not taste, or hear, that's the kind of stuff you record, and you literally write it down, because, and it's the idea that you're trying to put down all the things that would be, hey, don't buy this home because of this. And then that lets everybody goes into eyes wide open. Then usually the report goes on, and then there's a detailed part of the report. And some of this stuff is boilerplate, blah, 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 blah. And then they put in pictures and they show and all of that kind of stuff. Okay, fine. Then usually what a good buying agent will do is they'll say, okay, let's go over this stuff. And they'll go over stuff that's major or minor. Also, a good buying agent is going to take into account what market we're in, and are there other offers, and how much did we offer for the home? All of these things play a factor. So for instance, a home that I helped my buyers last year get into. We made an offer. We barely squeaked in with two other offers that we barely beat out, and we were at 1.95 million. And it was in Highland Park. And some people could be like, wow, that's a lot for a home. Well, we literally squeaked by. And I happen to know if one of those offers knew that we had the top price, they still would have beat our offer. It just happened to be, it was a final set of offers and it wasn't going to go any farther. So whatever came in, came in. So now, doesn't mean to say that we wouldn't have tried to beat it some more, but that's what happened. But knowing that everything was so close, I prepared my buyers and said, look, guys, if we ask for repairs, and that's if one, the sellers know they can say no, because what are we going to do? Are we going to cancel? They know you don't want to cancel. And they also know they've got two other buyers that will probably come in, maybe even more than what you're offering now, because they're still going to have to compete with one another. So understand that, and they did. My buyers were wonderful on that. And okay, fine. So there was a number of things in the inspection report, like some of the GFCI switches weren't working properly and probably needed to be replaced. Big deal. You get a handyman, they go to Lowe's or Home Depot, they get the right one, you're done. Fine. So that kind of stuff we didn't care about. Some of the paint on the decking outside around the pool was peeling. Don't care. All of that kind of stuff, did not care. And the home was actually in excellent condition, but there was a lot of termite damage. And there was a lot of, and then we also did a sewer inspection at the same time. And the sewer inspection showed that there was damage. So I had a conversation with the listing agent who was there also well. And I had built up a great rapport with her. So that really helped. And I said, listen, we're not concerned about the small stuff, but some of the bigger items, like the termite and the sewer, how do your sellers, how receptive would they be if we were to ask? Now, we would have still sent a request for repairs. But by me having that conversation, she said, well, Rob, you'll never know unless you ask. So that told me she's also had a conversation with them that there's probably going to be repairs. Okay, sure enough, we got all of section 1 of the termite report. And there's a difference between section 1 and section 2. Section 1 is like the actual home itself. And the part that there was literally termites and wood rot in was like boards above the front porch and that kind of thing. Section 2 was decking that was going into the wood, and those were subterranean termites, but it wasn't part of the house structure, and it was section 2. So that they weren't going to repair. That's fine. We kind of didn't care about that anyway. And the sewer, they gave us credit for the sewer repair too, because there was some cracks and there was some roots in the sewer that needed to be fixed. Okay, fine. So we did get that. But I submitted all of our reports like this, and I did the same thing that this agent did, where she summarized all of the major things that should go in there. Now, let me tell you, this particular home was a 6,500 square foot home. It had 5 bedrooms. Each bedroom had its own bathroom. There was a master suite upstairs and a junior master downstairs. There was a library. There was a guest bathroom downstairs. There was a pool house that had a full bathroom and a kitchenette, spa, jacuzzi, pool. And yes, so that kind of gives you, these were the major things that they put down on there, because they had competed with multiple offers. They barely beat out the other offer. And I had a good rapport with the buyer agent, and she knew these would be the significant things. These are the things that needed to be fixed, but not everything needed to be fixed. So therefore, this is what they asked for. That's what you do. Okay. So, and we usually call this a punch list, literally like you punch it out when you're done. Contractors are very used to calling things a punch list. Hey, send me over the punch list. That means, what do I need to knock out? And then we're okay. So this shows you when you do inspections, you know what you do. Now, let me also say, some inspections, I would recommend at a minimum, you would do termite inspection and you would do a general inspection. Then from there, you're going to have to, and sometimes that's when you ask other people who've been in the business for a while, even their opinions. What if there's a chimney? You know, do you need to do a chimney inspection? What about the roof? What about now? A general inspection will do a light inspection of the chimney, and everything will be done kind of light. They'll make sure that, hey, they can look at it. Oh, there's some tiles that may need to be replaced or whatever. Oh, that kind of thing, like on the roof, that's fine. But do they go in depth? No. And if you need for it to go in depth, that's when you need more. What if there's cracks in the foundation? You know, what if you can tell that something needs to be dealt with the foundation? They're just going to say, hey, the foundation needs to be looked at. So it's going to be very limited on that. What you're going to need to do is then maybe call in somebody who does foundations and get their inspection, and then get their report on how much it would cost to fix. You know, another thing could be, what if the air conditioning, like the general inspection, I had one like this last year where the temperature, I forgot what it was supposed to be. I think it was like the outgoing air was supposed to be somewhere around 42 degrees and the outgoing air was like 58. My client was fine with that. But technically, and there was a few other things with the HVAC system too, like we probably could have called in an HVAC specialist and look at it and give us a much more thorough inspection of it. So the additional inspections would be, what if there's something more? In the same unit, by the way, I looked at the ceiling, and it had the popcorn ceiling, and I looked at the year and I was like, that could be asbestos because of when this place was built and it goes that far back. Okay, so how do you test for that? So I had to find somebody, because they're not readily out there. I had to find somebody who actually does testing for this stuff. And they came out, they took a sample, and it did have asbestos. But their inspection of it showed too that the asbestos was completely undisturbed. And asbestos is dangerous when it's airborne. So if it's sealed in and it's undisturbed, there's no health risk. You know, that's the rule of thumb. My client was fine with that. So, and everybody has their own, you know, where they're comfortable with things on what they should do. Our job as a realtor is to advise them. And if they're like, well, I don't want to pay for that inspection, then that's on them. But you want to advise them. You at least want to let them know what's available to them and maybe what should be done. That's what you do. So, and then what you do is, then all of that, you should gather what all the repairs are and what you're going to ask for them. Let me show you somebody who did this incorrectly last year, and we kind of hit them on the nose for it. So this was their request for repair. It was a 2-bedroom, 1.5 bath condo, and he had completely renovated the whole thing, completely renovated it. Okay, great. So they did an inspection, and this was their list they wanted to give. Okay. And then they said, okay, buyer requests that basically they reduce the price to $4,000. Okay. Why? Literally, this is all I got. Why? I looked at this and I went, why do we have to reduce it? I don't know. Replace or repair the garbage disposal. How much is it? Repair the dishwasher. How much is it? As a listing agent, it's not my responsibility to figure out what your buyer wants the credit or the reduction of price for. That's your responsibility as a buyer agent. Now, I happen to do some research and find out what the estimates would be. But I literally, we took this and I took the email and I emailed back and I said, no, no, we're not doing any of these. I got a phone call within 15 minutes. And by the way, she was competing with 6 other offers too. And I got a phone call within 15 minutes and she said, what, why are you denying us? And I said, you have no breakdown on the cost. Well, all that stuff needs to be repaired. I don't know what specific things cost on those repairs. Well, it's a lot of things. How did you come up with that number? I figured some of it would be that amount. And I said, and then I even put in there too, and even the way she worded it was kind of unprofessional. All these question marks, you know, Zinsco service electrical panel repair or replace. What do you mean by all the question marks? Okay. But anyways, and I said, the electrical panel in the inspection report itself said it's not a danger. Well, it says that, there's been problems with those in the past. Okay. In your own inspection report, it said, because I should say, I said that, and she goes, well, we got an estimate that would be at least 2,500 or 3,000 to replace. I never got that estimate. Oh, I can send that over to you. Well, one, why didn't you send it over with this? Okay. That's on you. And as you can see already, you're not creating a good relationship with this other agent that you're supposed to be working with to close.
Mhm.
So she sends it over, and I said, okay, but I said, in your own inspection report, it said these have been known to fail at times in the past, but it does not, it says right in the report, it does not mean it needs to be replaced.
Mhm.
And she said, yeah, but it could fail. I said, anything could fail. This place was built in 1973, and it's the same electrical panel that's in there. There hasn't been a problem yet. Oh, so you're not going to give it to us? No. Oh, okay. And there was a few other things involved in that too. I won't go into it. It ended up actually, we canceled. I forced them to cancel, and we went with a backup offer. That never had a problem with our electrical panel. But this is what we got. And I'm like, what am I supposed to respond to this? So we just said, no, you're asking for a flat out number. It should be broken down. In fact, this was our response. We would install the carbon, because I hadn't had a chance to install yet. We will install the carbon monoxide and smoke detectors. Request for 4,000, I made it very clear, is denied, period. That's it. And yeah, that's the route we went. Now, what we did do is because my seller said, well, look, I want to know what some of these other minor things would be. So I did what's called a porch estimate, because this is where things get a little bit tough as a buying agent. What if you have to do a request for repair and you do need those GFCI things replaced by a professional handyman, somebody who, comes in, it's not, your Uncle Jay. And by the way, I am very handy around the house. I have owned my house for over 30 years. I know how to replace a ton of things. I do not do any of this on my clients' homes because I don't want to be held liable. It needs to be, once you're in this kind of a transaction, it needs to be done by a professional or accredited, and the buyer takes on the responsibility. But you need to stay clear of doing anything that can end up biting you in the butt later on. It seems like you're doing them a favor, but you're not. Now, if you're replacing a light bulb, fine. I get that. You're replacing the switch to the light. Nope, don't do that. That's what I'm saying. So what I did is I looked up, because I thought, look, my seller really wanted to close the deal. And even though it's really on the buyer's point of view, I looked up what some of the repairs would be. And that's how we came up with the estimate, as you saw in the previous document, of around like 882 we were willing to credit. Okay, fine. So what we did is this, because, well, what if there is a leaky faucet? What if there is, the toilet that it needs the plunger replaced on the thing? What if there is a switch, a dimmer switch that isn't working anymore for the outside light? Whatever, any of those things you need fixed, and you need to get estimates for that. Well, calling somebody out for all this can be a little bit tough. And I'll be honest, there's times that I'm very handy and I'll do the bird's eye view, like, that's probably a $50 repair. And sometimes it'll come back and it's like, that's $198. I'm like, what? Wow, that was a lot more than I thought. Or sometimes I'll do the opposite. Sometimes I'll be like, oh, with labor and everything, that's going to be this much. And they combined it all together and said, well, if you have an electrician come out and he's doing this, this, and this, it's probably going to be $200 in labor and it's going to be $60 in parts. And I was like, well, that was a lot cheaper than I thought it'd be. So it's better to get estimates like this. So what you do is I want to walk you through when you go into command, this is how you get the porch report. So you go into command and I'm logged into my command here. Okay. Oh, I got to switch over. Sorry. Let me switch screens. That would really help. Stop and then share again. So I'm in command.
Mhm.
Okay. Now you go into opportunities, which I know sounds weird. This is where you're going, but that's what you have to do. And there's a real weird quirk with this as well. If you want to create an opportunity and you do create the opportunity, okay, and blah, 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 opportunity type, whatever, you know, you're representing the buyer, the client. This is where command is stupid. And I'm just going to put it out there. If you have this buyer and it's Denzel Washington, and you're like, okay, great. Oh, but I haven't entered him into command yet. And you type in Denzel, you can't add him. He already has to be in your contacts for you to use him as a client. So that's the quirky thing that literally you have to go back into contacts if you haven't added them, add them, then you go back to here. Stupid, but it's the way it is. So I'm going to pull up my mom and we're just going to use her. So there's my mom and she's a buyer and I can leave the rest, you know, whatever I want and hit create. Oh, wait, commission rate. Yeah, my mom's going to pay me a lot. So there we go. Now, why do I start this? This is where the magic of Porch is. Porch is a third-party company. And what Porch does is it will let you upload and pay attention, a single document, not multiples, but a single document. So if you want an estimate on something, and let's say you have a sewer inspection, let's say you have a chimney inspection, let's say you have the general inspection, let's say you have a roof inspection, and all of those need estimates, combine it all together. Because then you'll get all of it, because you can't do it separately. Otherwise you have to create separate reports for each one and you're going to be getting all these different things together. So that's one of the first things I would say to do that, make it one. Another thing is you saw in that other document where I showed that the agent who knew what she was doing only put the punch list of what she needed. So when I put together my porch list, I don't include the entire inspection report. I only include the part of it that, and by the way, those inspection reports can be 30, 40 pages. I only include like, oh, the bathroom door to the fourth bedroom needs adjusting because it's not closing properly. So I literally copy that part out, either that page or just that part out. And then that's the only part that goes in the report. So if you're asking like, well, it sounds like you're having to do screenshots and then maybe bring them into Microsoft Word or some other document so I can save it as a PDF. That's exactly what I'm saying. That way it makes it clean and easy for you that you're only including the parts that you want the estimates on. So if there's a dimmer switch in the hall that doesn't work properly and you don't care about that, then you don't include that, you know. But if the door isn't closing properly, or let's say there's a broken window that needs replaced, that's a part that you include. And then that's a part of the inspection you can put in there. And you put that in there. Same thing with if there's any other things, you know, like I said, you had somebody come out and they took a look at, you had a specialist come out and they took a look at the iron gate or you had a contractor look at the iron gate because something needs to be fixed on that. So then they you know, say, hey, this is what needs to be done, and you get an estimate. So you put that all together in a single PDF, you get that ready. Then you hit the get started. And you drag that single PDF. See, it says drag and drop your file, not files, file. So you drag and drop that file. So I'm going to go ahead and let let's see. I'm just going to drag and drop this, whatever, because we're faking it anyway. There we go. So I dragged and dropped it in there. That's my PDF. Then this is the other magic. Technically, your client has to give consent in order for this to happen. So, what happened? What does that mean? Well, if let's say I put my mom's information in there, then she'll get a link to saying, hey, we got a request to do estimates on these repairs. Will you consent to that? Now, she's not paying any money for this, but she still has to consent to it. She has to click on it. Okay, now we'll send it. So that could delay everything. What if your client is at work? You know, what if any of those things? And usually when you're in inspection time, you got things like this going on. So guess whose information I put in as a client? Me. And so the link comes to me. I say, yes, you're fully authorized. And then bingo, they send it off. And I've done that multiple times and it works. So that's what I do. I'm like, okay, blah, 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 blah. So in fact, guess what? There I am, because it knows I do it all the time. I even use my personal email address to just like, okay, at least they're both not the same. And then I send the request. So I go ahead and send the request. And okay, great. Now technically I'm done. That's it. You're almost done, because the link has to be approved, which is coming to me. So I get that right now. But what if I want it faster? Usually it says it'll be there within 48 hours. And sometimes you're in a time frame where it's like, yeah, that's fine. And by the way, this is free. Well, how is it free? Well, because you're having people that are estimators trying to get the work. So they're putting out bids to hopefully get the work so they'll get paid. So that's the reason why they're putting together these estimates. Now, if you do want it faster, you pay. So, and trust me, I've paid, so that's fine. If you want it within 24 hours, you pay $50. So I've done that sometimes. Now, sometimes I haven't. Sometimes I'm like, hey, our timeline is fine. I don't care if we wait an extra, 24 hours. Other times I'm like, no. And when they say within, it's usually been a lot less. It usually hasn't been even that full 24 or 48. But still, if I want it like, hey, like if I submit it at the beginning of the day and I pay $50, a lot of times I'll have the estimate by the end of the day. So it's like, that's worth it to me. Other times I'm like, no, it's okay if I get it tomorrow. That's fine. So again, it just depends. And then that's what you do. So for you, Alyssa, any questions on this?
No, I think I get it. Perfect.
Okay, great. So we're going to go back into Acrobat. So this is what you end up getting. Okay. This is the report that you end up getting. And it shows like, okay, if you were going to sub everything out and you only wanted this and you only wanted this and you only wanted this, okay, fine, because they're going to be different calls and so on. It's going to be up 332. But if you were to get this all repaired at once underneath, appliance repair guy, it'll probably be 232. So this allows you to kind of parse out what you need done. And then you can put in what you do is when you submit the request for repairs, you can put the estimate in there, but a lot of times it's better not to do that. You just attach this with it. So if you do say, hey, we're asking for $2,500 in credits, and you submit this and you list the things that are wrong and you're asking for it to either be repaired or credited, then a listing agent will get this and understand your reasoning. That's what you're trying to communicate. Why are you asking for $2,500? Oh, well, underneath the appliances, they actually need $232. Okay, that makes sense. What are the other things? And then that's how me as an agent, I start to figure that out. So that's how, this works. And this really helps because it allows you to use this as a guide, as putting together what your estimates, because that's one of the big questions I get. And I thought, we've done requests for repairs, but how do you actually get the totals? So let's walk through one. You you don't want to just guess, because when you just guess and you don't give a good reason, I showed you on that example, we just told them no. And on the other side of it, if you have somebody that's really good, they'll give you, these are the things we need fixed or repaired, and here's an estimate of what they would be, then great. And then it also really helps to always have a conversation, if possible, with the listing agent on what do these things mean? Like, if you were to do a request for repair, are they really just wanting it repaired? Or did the listing agent say, hey, we have somebody coming out and they're going to be repairing that anyway? Because that's been the case with some of my clients at times. So you it kind of helps to feel that out, you know, and what's taking place. Many times when you have a request for repair, it is settled in a buyer credit, because if you actually want to do the repairs, what if the repairs take longer than what escrow or your inspection period allows for? Now you're asking for extensions, and now everything gets dragged out. What if the repair is done and the buyer's not happy with it, but the seller paid for it? Well, then the seller's got to fix that, and it still gets ugly. Whereas if you give credit to the buyers and it's on the buyer's responsibility, that allows them to do it and allows all the timelines to continue in the order that they should be continuing in. It allows you to close most likely on time or close to being on time. It also allows the buyer to pick the vendors that are working on the house that they're going to be buying. Or what if, like me, I know how to replace circuit outlets and our GFCI isn't working? Fine, we get a credit for like $125 to have that. Then I order a really good one on Amazon that's highly rated, you know, and I pay $40 for that and I put it in myself. Great. I have a really good replacement, but now I just saved $80 because I did it myself because I know how to do it. Easy. Okay. That's some of the stuff that you run into when you work with some of the buyers. And again, your buyers, some of them, if they're luxury buyers, they're going to be the ones like, no, I want somebody else coming in and doing it. Other people like me that can be handy. It depends on what it is. You know, replacing electrical circuits. Yes. Putting in our whole HVAC AC system. No, I hired somebody for that. I don't know what I'm doing. So that's the kind of thing where you kind of feel that out. Also, if you do a credit, everybody's happy. There's a nuance to this, and I want you guys to understand. When you are submitting something and it's going between the listing agent and the buying agent, especially on the request for repairs, have the conversation that you want to keep it just between you two. What you two work out together, then send that to escrow. Because what you don't want happening, and you can also talk to escrow and tell escrow, do not send our request for repairs to the lender. A lender is lending you money. Let's say a lender is lending you $885,000 to buy a home. That's how much they're lending you. But then they come across a termite report. That's why, in fact, in another thing, when I talk about the RPA, do not put termite report in there, because as soon as they see that, they want to see a termite clearance. So, but what if they also come across your request for repairs, like in this section? They want to make sure that that is worth $885,000, that there's not $52,000 of repairs that have to be done, that they don't know what's happening. Then they want to see all of that cleared, and that gets ugly. So you keep the lender out of that. You also want to keep escrow from keeping the lender out of that. And escrow really doesn't need to see all these documents, because this is just between the listing agent and the buying agent, and then the parties they represent. What the final agreement is, like, oh, we agree to credit $2,500 to the buyer, then that goes to escrow, because then escrow knows, oh, okay, now out of some of this money, some of it's getting credited to the buyer. If you ask for a reduction in price, it's a two-edged sword on that. First, a very small amount of that is that your buyer itself will pay a little bit less property taxes, but understand, like, that's dollars. It's not a lot, but technically they are paying less property taxes depending on what it is. I mean, I had one client that we got credited $25,000. So for them, it was a little bit more significant, you know, and he was like, hey, I'd rather save the property taxes, because he had money in the bank, so he was fine. So he didn't need the credit. Great. But as soon as that we decided that it's okay to do a reduction in price, that information had to go to the seller, or sorry, to the lender, because the lender had to readjust their loan because now they're not lending out the same amount of money as they were previously. So all of that has to get recalculated. Whereas if you just do a credit, the amount of the loan is the same, but then the buyers just credited the money in the transaction. So there is a difference of that, but you want to keep the request for repairs out of the lender's hands. And if it goes through escrow, just make sure that escrow doesn't put it in the lender's hands, because then that makes things sticky. And again, I haven't done any requests for repairs that have gone through escrow. I've done it directly through the listing agent, or if I'm on the listing side, through the buying agent, and we've handled it, and just our final agreement then goes in. And even sometimes when we've gone back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, we both agreed this is really hairy now. So let's just make an addendum summary. And in the addendum summary, we'll just have both parties sign and say, hey, the seller is crediting the buyer $2,500. And that's all that has to get put in there. Everybody understands what it's for, but then that goes into escrow. And by the way, a document like that, if it ever gets to the lender doesn't care. It just says, hey, there's a credit going on. He doesn't need to know why, or she. So just want to let you know that's how all of that plays out. So again, in summary, do not send a request for repair that looks like this with no backup, because just like us, we were like, no. You don't want to do that. What you'd like to do is send a request for repair that looks like this, very neat and clean, that also includes the inspection report with it, so we know what they were referencing and, oh, that makes sense. And they also included on a separate sheet the actual estimates for all of these things that they requested. And if you need to be on that side, then you can do the porch repair estimates and get it down like this. See, by the way, if you notice on here, it says make a request. That means that, like, if you were to click on that, then you would contact the vendor who bid out on this. So that's why they're giving you this. So it's live people bidding. So if anybody were to ask, well, what is this porch thing about? Hey, this is an actual person who does this work and they will do it for this amount of money. All we have to do is click on that and it'll let us, do that sort of thing. So that's the reason why you're getting those estimates. But if you send something like this with all your backup documentation, then that gives a reason for the listing agent to go to the seller and say, okay, on these things, what are reasonable? What is not reasonable? And then you can have those conversations. And in all of these things, remember, every buyer, every home, every situation, every seller is different. So you weigh, what's taking place there. Home I sold last year in Highland Park, we got a very unreasonable request for repairs because the home had literally been purchased 4 years prior. Brand new flip, done very well, not a cheap flip, done very well. And they came in and they wanted retrofitting done on everything in the basement area, but it didn't need to be done. It had passed city inspections. It had passed general inspections, and it had passed permit inspections. So it was fine. They basically wanted upgrades. So when they put that on request for repairs, our response was, no, that's an upgrade. That's not actually a repair. So that was one thing we had to kind of talk them down from, but it was a good conversation. At the same time, my sellers said, Rob, look, on some of the things, it was like $2,000. They said, let's just give this to them. We want to close and we just want to do this quickly and easily. For them, $2,000 wasn't a big deal. So they just wanted to close. So I said, okay, I just want to let you know, you don't have to. We understand, but we just want to. So that way we also don't get any flack for maybe anything else that they put in there. Okay, great. So that's what we did. They were that way. I've had other sellers say, no, that's stupid. We're only going to give them the termite report and we're going to give them the sewer report. Like when we were on the buying side, which made sense. And then that's what worked out. So you got to feel this out. But everything I'm talking about had documentation with it. Everything was itemized and everything was clear. So it was very clear what the buyers were asking for. So then the sellers and the listing agent would know how to respond. It's just you, Alyssa, but do you have any questions on this?
No, that was good. Thank you.
Okay. Well, thanks. And again, some of this stuff has been covered in some of the other requests for repairs and some of the other ones, but I wanted to kind of do a deep dive on it today because this is some of the stuff that's coming up. And I want to make sure that when you guys are making an offer and in escrow, that you're representing your clients to the best of your ability. So thanks for being here. And I will